Hi, this is lesson 3 about science competency assessment. From curriculum through teaching and learning and assessment. Science competency assessment is all about assessing students' science skills in science inquiry. Okay, and then we talked about whenever you set up an experiment or investigation, we needed to talk about independent and dependent variable. Okay, for example, if we want to test how 3 different lengths of a string affect the period of a pendulum using these materials and this procedure, and you need to let your student design an experiment so that they can test this hypothesis. So when students set up a hypothesis, they needed to tell the difference between independent variable, dependent variable, and control variable. Okay, they also needed to design an experiment to see what things change, how a pendulum swings. This is another one. They can experiment or investigate the relationship between voltage and electronic current. To do that, they want to control the resistance in that experiment, okay? This is the scenes Korean students are collecting or conducting experiment. The topic is about when the voltage increases, what is happening, what is changing. And then students needed to conduct experiment. And then they collect data. Sometimes they needed to transform that number data into a graph. This is the graph they needed to make. And this is the process of competency-based assessment. You need to set up the goals or purpose of your competency assessment. If you want to assess your students' science competency, you need to begin with a statement of the purpose for the assessment. And you also need to locate the content domain you want to measure. And then you want to specify what kind of student thinking you want to assess. And then sometimes you need to uncover student ideas. Sometimes it's called student prior knowledge, prior concept, or sometimes it's called misconception. And then you need to let them explain their ideas. And you also need to consider curriculum or teaching and learning considerations. And then also one of the uses of your assessment is about you want to collect some information about how to improve your instruction or your teaching. So this, before we talk about student competency-based assessment, can you remember the PISA assessment about greenhouse effect? It's not about just finding the correct key to the question. They always ask students to explain your answer. It's about providing the rationale for students' answer. So through that kind of probing or through that kind of competency assessment item, we can develop students' scientific thinking or their competency in explaining anything based on evidence. Okay, so this is about the process is all connected. We are assessing or we are implementing competency-based assessment to improve teachers' teaching or instruction. So whenever we do competency-based assessment, we teachers draw out suggestions for instruction. Okay, based on your assessment result, you are assessing of your students' competency, you can uncover or examine the ideas students bring to their learning. An assessment focused on this area, it's called the diagnostic assessment, as you well know. And it's also called the formative assessment. They are forming, students are learning are forming through this assessment. The opposite one to formative assessment is summative assessment. Okay, and then sometimes for the probe to be used formatively, teachers need to think about how to choose or modify a lesson or activity to best address your students' needs. If your students have some kind of misconception and you find out your students' misconception, then you need to modify or do something for your students' misconception by changing your teaching and learning process. Okay, and then this one is about another one. The goals or uses of your assessment. Making informed decisions about instruction is the essence of formative assessment. Okay, and based on your assessment for student competency, you need to carefully analyze your student's response, which is the most important next step to make an instructional decision that would work best in your particular context. So you need to, when you design competency-based assessment, you need to consider the learning goal of your lesson, and then your students' ideas, and then curricular and instructional materials that you used, and the diverse learners you have in your classroom. And it may also provide suggestions for ways to include science practices, or sometimes it's science inquiry processes. Okay, let's move on to A, competency-based assessment, which is focused on explaining students' thinking based on evidence. This one is focused on middle school level. Okay, this is the context of assessment item. Two students are having an argument about the moon. Here is what they said. A girl is saying the moon is falling toward the earth because of gravity. And the boy is saying, no, the moon cannot fall toward the earth because there is no gravity in space. It's empty. Okay, the question is, circle whom you agree with the most, boy or girl. And then this is important. This is the way they say in PISA, as well as TIMSS, as well as competency-based assessment. Explaining why you agree with a person, not the other one. Okay, so this is, you need to analyze the purpose of your competency assessment. Why are you assessing this one? Why are you making or developing this kind of item? The purpose is you want to elicit or you want to diagnose your students' prior conception, your students' ideas and thinking. And then what is the related science concept? gravity, orbit, solar system, space, and explanation. Which one is correct? The girl is correct, right? Why? The student A has the best idea. The moon is falling toward the earth. Then the next question, next probing question could be, in that case, why isn't the moon hitting on the ground? Since the moon is falling toward the earth because of the earth's gravity. And then, why can not we watch moon is hitting on the ground? That's the next step, right? So what would you do if you want to assess this student? Okay, you need to provide why student A is correct. It's not about finding out who is correct. It's about why she is correct. You need to probe your student to provide the rationale or evidence or data that support their response. Okay, so this probe is best used at the middle or high school level. However, keep in mind your teachers should keep in mind, should remember that understanding orbit is a difficult concept, requiring that students have a good understanding of gravity. While students in middle school can develop a qualitative understanding of what keeps an object in orbit, details are usually addressed at the high school level. What I am saying is this one. There is a sequence of teaching science concept with all the same question. You can make it a middle school level assessment item or high school level assessment item. It's up to you, depending on your probing questions. That's what they are saying. In terms of gravity, it's called the forces of nature. One of the forces of nature is gravity. This is a grade 3 to 5 level of achievement standards. This is achievement standards for grade 6 to 8. This is achievement standard for high school level. If you go up to high school level, you are talking about Newton's 3 laws and other things. Sometimes you can talk about Kepler's laws at the high school level. But for this question is about middle school level. So you should not talk about other than qualitative aspect of gravity. Okay? What would you do if you want to change this item to high school level competency assessment item? Think about it. So this is all related aspect. Before we talk about in detail, can you tell why we are doing competency assessment? Competency-based assessment starts or begins with competency-based curriculum. And then you need to teach or develop your student competency through teaching and learning activity. And then you are assessing your students' competency through formative assessment, sometimes extended essay assessment. Okay, Throughout all this one, the step is, why are you assessing? You need to set up the goals of your assessment, the purpose of your assessment. And you need to locate or uncover your students' ideas. And then you need to cover related science concept. And you need to provide some rationale for those science concept through teaching and learning. And then you also need to consider curricula or your instructional characteristics. And based on your competency-based assessment, you need to find out how to improve your instruction as well. So let's talk about another assessment that you can use to assess your student competency. This one is the situation. Okay, 3 students are playing with the ramp and marbles. They decide to have a contest to see who can make a marble roll down a ramp the fastest. And they each let go of their marbles at the top of their ramp. Circle whose marble will reach the bottom of the ramp first. A, B, C, and no one. And then this is the usual format. Explain your thinking. Describe your ideas about the times it takes for the marble to reach the end of the different ramps. Can you see what we are talking about? We talked about PISA test, which is assessing science competency. This is the component of competency. Remember? Setting up hypothesis and conducting experiment and then draw conclusion and communication. And we are talking about you can assess. This is a PISA's competency assessment here. They are assessing this kind of science competency. And we can use this kind of assessment item to assess our students' science competency by asking students to explain their answer or explain their thinking. Okay, so this is the purpose and explanation. This is a related concept, science concept, acceleration, average speed, or time interval. And this is how to administrate this assessment item. This is a tips for teachers to assess their students' competency. This is setting up. Teachers can set up for this probe with the probes and use in the probes in example, use 3 pieces of a flexible PVC pipe that are the same height and the ramp. Can you see the situation? You can use this kind of ramp, or you can use a PVC pipe, like bending this way or bending this way. You can use PVC pipes as well. This is just saying how to administrate this competency-based assessment item or probe. And this is showing the curricula for the elementary level. This one is for elementary level achievement standards. And this one is, you can also use this kind of probe for middle school level. Okay, how fast things move differs greatly. They can tell, they are not talking about acceleration. They only talk about the difference, the change of velocity. Okay, they are not talking about acceleration. This is the one. What if you want to use this kind of, this is the same situation for high school level? What would you do? for high school level. This is, as I told you before, we are conducting students' competency assessment for getting some information for our instruction as well. So look here, suggestions for instruction and assessment. This probe can be used as a PEO strategy. I mean, let your students make a prediction and then explain their reasoning. Which one hits the bottom the first? A, B, C. And let them explain why they thought that way. And then test the prediction. And then look here, predict and keep record, collect data, and draw out result. If we want to use this probe another way or for another level, sometimes you can use all the same probe for elementary school level or middle school level or high school level. But depending on your probing question, the information you get out of your assessment is different. So a second version of this probe can be used as a follow-up with older students, such as high school students. Ask students which marble will be moving the fastest at the end of the lamp. I mean, when they hit the ground, which one is the fastest? This is not for probing for elementary school students, right? This question is different from the probe, the original probe, remember? Through this probe, which asks which marble will reach the end of the ramp first. This one is the original probe. Okay, all three marbles will be rolling at approximately all the same speed. Why is that? The forces, the external net forces are all the same. Potential energy, and then potential energy convert into motional energy, right? So when they reach the bottom of each ramp, this is because the height of three ramps is all the same, also known as potential energy. So here, gravitational potential energy is all the same. So they have all the same speed when they hit the bottom, reach the bottom of the ramp. If we want to use this probe, what could be different? Okay, this is another one. This gravitational potential energy becomes kinetic energy, motion energy at the bottom of the ramp. But there's a control variable. There should be a control variable. Remember, the independent and dependent variable and other variables should be kept in constant or the same. It's called the control variable. In this situation, friction should be a control variable. And the marbles should be identical. It's another control variable. Okay, so what we talked about this competency-based assessment, which is also known as science inquiry skills in science competency-based curriculum. So provide the younger student with additional opportunities to explore balls and ramps. There's a saying in science education, hands-on activity. You can learn more through hands-on activity rather than just seeing or listening to what teachers are saying. Okay, For example, if the ramps are all the same, does the mass of the ball make a difference? Depending on the mass of the balls, what would be the ending speed of the balls? And variables that affect the speed of the ball. What about the height of the ramp, length, or material of the ramp? If you made that ramp other than PVC pipe, what about you have some kind of sticky surface ramp? In that case, friction variable will affect the result of this experiment. So, in conclusion, PISA test for creative thinking competency is introduced. If you want to look up and go to PISA website and Google or search for creative thinking competency assessment, they released creative thinking competency assessment item as well on PISA website, and try to develop a formative assessment item to test your students' creative thinking and other science competencies as well. It's all connected, from competency-based curriculum to teaching and learning, and then assessing your students' science competency. It's all about science inquiry skills. Okay, thank you very much and see you again. Thank you. Bye-bye.